Hello friends, very happy and healthy morning to all of you. I myself, Dr. Padmakshi Vyas from Shri and Srimati Wala Arts College, Patan, Hemchandracharya, North Gujarat University, Patan. Today I am going to deliver my lecture on Aristotle's theory of imitation for the student of special English, or what we may say for the student of English literature of BA semester 3 of Hemchandracharya, North Gujarat University, paper number CC 305, and the topic is Aristotle's theory of imitation. So dear friends, it's my humble request to all of you to keep a notebook and pen or pad to jot down the important points and notes for your better information. I also request you to use your earplugs for better audio result. You can see that this is the peak of Aristotle, and today we are going to discuss about Aristotle's theory of imitation. Dear friends, in this slide you can see that the syllabus of your core compulsory 305 is given in this slide, and here you can see that the name of paper is Foundation Course in Literary Criticism. So here you can also see that there are total 4 units you will be given to study, or you will be given to learn during this semester. Before to move towards these 4 units and the topic of these 4 units, I think you first look at the title of your paper or the name of your paper. Concentrate on the name of your paper, and the name of your paper is Foundation Course in Literary Criticism. So now you can understand that the title of the paper itself is the suggestive of the content or the topic or the thing that you will have to learn or study during the whole semester in paper CC 305. So by this title, you come to know that you have to learn, or the intention of this paper is to make you acquainted with the basic concept of literary criticism, with the fundamental concept of literary criticism, the primary ideas and information about literary criticism. So now look at unit 1, and the first topic in your first unit is that what is literary criticism. The next is function of criticism, or the function of a critic. So here you can see that the basic aim or the basic goal of this paper is to make you acquainted with the fundamental base of literary criticism. Means what is criticism, what is the function of criticism, what are the qualities of a good critic, etc. Look at the second unit. In this unit, after the basic ideas and fundamental concept and the fundamental theory of literary criticism, you are introduced. Plato and Aristotle are introduced in this second unit. Here you can see that Plato's ideas of arts and poetry is already given to study. In the second point, you can see that Aristotle's theory of imitation, or what we may say Aristotle's theory of mimesis, is already there in this second unit. in the third unit, you can see that selected literary terms are given to you in this unit. So these selected literary terms are given to you for further study and for your acquaintance. So the aim of this unit is to make you acquainted with the literary terms, just like plot, theme, character, tragic hero, humor, hamartia, imagination, allegory, satire, pathos, etc. In the fourth unit, you can see that it's the appreciation of poem. So here you will be given an unseen poem in this unit, and you will have to appreciate the poem from a different angle. So now I think there is not any there is a clarification of the syllabus of paper CC 305, and everything is clear. I think I have described you the syllabus of this paper. Now, before to discuss about Aristotle's theory of imitation and his book Poetics, it is quite necessary for all of us to have understanding and knowledge about Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, etc. So here you can see that Aristotle was a great Greek philosopher, a psychologist, a logician, a moralist, a political thinker, a biologist, and a founder of literary criticism. So here you can see that Aristotle was not merely a literary critic, but he was a versatile personality. He had the knowledge of so many things or so many branches at the same time. So here we come to know that Aristotle was not only a literary critic or a very well-known literary figure, but he was a versatile personality who had the knowledge and intellectuality about so many branches in a various fields. In the next point, you can see that Aristotle's analysis of the ideal form of tragic plays became a guideline for later playwrights in Western civilization. So from this sentence, we come to know that Aristotle's poetics, in his poetics, certain rules and regulations are given about how to write plays, and these rules and regulation or the analysis of the ideal form of tragic plays becomes a guideline for the playwrights who want to write plays. So we can say that Aristotle's Poetics is an authentic guideline for the playwrights who want to develop or who want to write their plays. Now, here you can see that in this slide you can find the basic information about Aristotle's Poetics. So, Aristotle was the great disciple of Plato, and it was Aristotle who took up the challenge of Plato at the end of Republic day. So, here I want to say that Aristotle was the great disciple of Plato, and Plato was the great disciple of Socrates. So Socrates is the master of Plato and Plato is the master of Aristotle. And Aristotle was not the fellow who invented the term imitation. Aristotle didn't coin the word imitation, but it was Plato who used first the term imitation. It was Plato, or Plato was the first to use the word imitation in connection with poetry, but Aristotle breathed into it a quite new life and soul. So here you can see that according to Aristotle, poetry was not only pleasant but also useful for man and society. So Aristotle said that the chief aim or chief goal of poetry was not only to give aesthetic pleasure or mere pleasure to man or human being or society or to the universe, but it is also useful to, it should be useful to man, a human being, a society, and to the whole universe. So in this way, poetics is a systematic exposition of the theory and practice of poetry. So in short, you can say that what is poetics? So poetics is a systematic exposition of the theory. It's a systematic exposition of the rules and regulation of the theory and practice of poetry. So about imitation. So Plato was the first to use the word imitation in connection with poetry. So I have already mentioned or already discussed it that Aristotle did not invent the word imitation, but it was Plato who first used the word imitation in connection with poetry. Aristotle took the word imitation from his master Plato. Moreover, Aristotle breathed into it a new life and soul. He breathed into it a quite a new definition into the theory of imitation. Moreover, Plato considered imitation merely as a mimicry or a copy of nature. So here you can see that Plato considered imitation just as a copy of the thing, just as a copy of phenomenal world, or it's a copy of nature or the copy of original world. And in this way, the poets are doing nothing new in their creation of poetry, but they are merely making copy of the phenomenal world. They are just merely making copy of the original world. They are just making copy of the nature that is already existed on the earth. So in this way, Plato considered imitation merely as a mimicry or a copy of nature. But Aristotle interpreted it as a creative process. So Plato's disciple Aristotle didn't agree with Plato's concept or Plato's theory of imitation. He didn't agree with this theory of imitation, and he took the interpreted it as a creative process. So in Aristotle's view, it is the principle of imitation which unites poetry with the other fine arts, and imitation is the common basis of the all fine arts, or what we may say that imitation is the common principle of all fine arts, and it is imitation which differentiate the fine arts from the other categories of arts, and that is useful arts. Here Aristotle's concept of tragedy is given in this slide. it is very necessary for you to become familiar with the main base of poetics, and that is Aristotle's concept of tragedy. So here you can see that tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude in language, embellished with each kind of artistic ornaments, the several kind being found in the separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions, I mean catharsis. So look here in the very first line of this definition of tragedy. Here you can see that first of all, tragedy is an imitation of an action. So imitation is the common base of all fine arts. So tragedy is an imitation of an action. Not only action, tragedy is an imitation of man in action. Now, the action must be serious. Here the word serious means grave. The action of a tragedy must be serious, means it must have gravity. The action must be grave with serious and sincere dialogues. Next, you can see the tragedy of an action that is serious, complete. Here the word complete means the action which must have three parts, and these three parts are the beginning, the middle, and an end. So the beginning, in the beginning, most of the major characters and situations and locations are introduced in the beginning. Moreover, the beginning is not the cause and consequence of any further action, and which also leads toward further more action. Now the middle is the cause and consequence of beginning, and it leads to further action of the play. Now the end is the cause and consequence of middle, and it doesn't lead to any more or any further action. Now go ahead towards the concept of tragedy. That tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. Here the word magnitude means the length of the action, the size of the action. The length of an action should not be too long or too short. It must be mediocre. It should not be too long. If it is too long, the beginning, the reader or the audience will forget the beginning before they reach towards the end of the action or end of the play. So it must have certain magnitude. In language, embellished with each kind of artistic ornaments. So here, the language of an action must be grave with the figure of speech, and ornamented language should be there in tragedy. The several kinds being found in the separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative. So moreover, the action of the play must be the parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative. The action of tragedy should not be narrative, but the men are in action. The story must be, or the plot must be represented through the action, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of this emotion. So the chief aim, the chief intention, or the chief goal of poetry is to arouse the feelings of pity and fear to audience or to the readers. So it's a psychological, it must create the psychological impact or effect on the minds of the reader or on the minds of the audience, and it purify their hearts. So I have already discussed Aristotle's concept of tragedy. Now we are moving towards Plato's idea of imitation. So here you can see that according to Plato, imitative arts are just copying and choice removed from reality. So he didn't give any place to this art in his state republic. So here you can find that Plato did not give the place to this art in his state republic, because according to him, imitation is not a creative process, but it's just copying, and by making copy, it's twice removed from reality. So he didn't think that it's a pure art, or the process of imitation is pure or creative. Here Aristotle's idea of imitation or mimesis. So in this way, in the very first chapter of Poetics, Aristotle says, I quote, "Epic poetry and tragedy, comedy, also the music of the flute and the lyre on most of their forms are modes of imitation." So here it is the process. Here in this slide you can see that it is the process of adding imagination and creativity to an idea. So it is a creative reproduction. It is said by Aristotle. So Aristotle didn't agree with Plato, and he says that imitation or poetic imitation is the process of adding imaginative process by intellectual process, by his imagination, by his passion, by his experiences, by his intellectuality, by his creativity. He makes or he reproduces something new. So in this way, it is a process of adding imagination and creativity to an idea. So it's a creative reproduction. Moreover, all arts differ from one another in three respects. You can see that their medium, objects and manner or mode of imitation are different from each other. Before to discuss about it, just look in this slide. There are certain topics that according to Aristotle, imitation is an imaginative representation of life. Means it is not merely making copy of life, but with the object of life, with the object of nature, with the object of phenomenal world. The poet add his imagination, his ideas, and with this imaginative process he makes imaginative representation of life. Moreover, the chief aims of poetry is to give pleasure. The third thing is idealistic treatment of life. So that by the theory of imitation, the poet imitates man in action. So they imitate man as they are, or were, or better than they are, or worse than they are, or as they are in reality. So they can also represent man on heroic scale, or what we can say that they also represent man on idealistic level, as you can see in an epic poetry and in tragedy. Here you can see that it represents universal truth. So by addition of his imagination, the poet represents an ideal man or worse man than he is in reality. So in this way, the poet, by the way of imitation, represents an ideal truth or universal truth, and he moves from particular to universal truth. It appeals through the emotions, not through cold reason. So here, all arts, there is a differences in the modes of imitation. So they differ from one another in three respects: the medium of imitation, the object of imitation, and the manner or mode of imitation. And thus the medium of the poet and the painter are different. The one imitates through form and color and brush, and the other through language, rhythm and harmony. So language is the medium of poetry, colors for painting and harmony for music. So we can say that language is the medium of poetry, and the raw material of language is words. So here you can see that language, rhythm, harmony is the medium of poetic imitation, while colors and form is the medium of a painter, and harmony, words, rhythm, these are the medium of imitation for music. So you can see that the musician imitates through rhythm and harmony. In this way, poetry is nearer to music than to painting. This is a very important point. Once again, I repeat the sentence. The musician imitates through rhythm and harmony, and in the same way, poetry also imitates through rhythm, harmony, and music. So in this way, poetry is quite nearer to music than to painting, because painting imitates through colors and forms. So it is a mistake to compare, it is a mistake to link poetry with painting as Plato did. The manner of a poet may be purely narrative, as that you can find in an epic, or as a presentation through action that you can find in tragedy or in a comedy, or I can say that in the drama. Thus different kinds of poetry differ from each other in their manners of imitation. Moreover, the object of imitation are man in action. So objects to be represented can be better than they are in real life, that you can find in an epic and in tragedy, or a verse or chip than they are in reality, that you can see in comedy or same as real. Even dramatic poetry differ from each other in the sense of tragedy and comedy according to their imitation of man as better or worse than in real life. As regards the object of imitation, Aristotle says that object of imitation are man in action. The poet may imitate man as they are or were or they may be or ought to be. So he may represent man either as better than real life or worse or as they are. This means that according to Aristotle's theory, imitation is not merely a photographic representation of the original things, but it's a purely creative process. By this creative process, the poet selects and orders the material from the nature, from the phenomenal world, and in this way, he creates reality. He brings it into order out of chaos. He can represent man better than in real life from the experience of history or legend. He gives us truth about an ideal universal kind. He tells us not what men are, but what they can be or ought to be. Here in this slide you can see that poetry should be written according to the laws of probability and necessity and the process of making particular to universal. So here I quote from Poetics. I quote, "It is not the function of the poet to relate what has happened, but what may happen according to the laws of probability or necessity," unquote. Moreover, there is a universal elements in great poetry. Thus, he or Aristotle equates or links poetry with philosophy. Aristotle says arts imitates nature, and in the Poetics we are told that the objects of poetic imitation are man in action. So man is the highest of the creators. He has within him an urge to rise upwards. Then poet imitates. The poet imitates the creative process of nature, but the object of his imitation are man in action. The action may be external or it may be internal. It may be the action within the soul. Means the action may be external or the action may the action may be within the mind of the protagonist. The ideas, the thought process of the protagonist, it is also there, which is linked up in this action. So Aristotle says art imitates nature, and in the Poetics we are told that object of imitation are man in action. By nature, Aristotle doesn't mean the outward world, but action or the creative force, the reproductive principle of the universe. So arts seeks to reproduces the process of mind as psychical energy working, deeds, incidents, events, actions of the protagonist. Here in this slide you can find that Plato and Aristotle, their ideas, how they differ from each other in the concept of imitation that is given in their Poetics. So here you can see that Plato linked poetry to painting. So Plato linked poetry to painting But we have already discussed that poetry is quite poetry is quite nearer to music, because poetry and music, the medium of imitation of poetry and music are same as language, rhythm and harmony, while the medium of imitation of painter is quite different. It's a color, brush or forms. So in this way poetry is quite near to uh, music than a painting. So Aristotle did a great Plato did a great mistake to by making a link between poetry and painting. Aristotle linked poetry to music because poetry imitates not only the externals but also internal emotions and experience. Here you can see that poetry presents a copy of nature. It is said by Plato. Plato said that poetry presents a copy of the thing, a copy of nature, a copy of phenomenal world. But Aristotle didn't agree with Plato's these views, and he challenged it and says that poetry may imitate man as they are than they are in real life. So it is an inward process, a psychical process also. Moreover, Plato condemned poetry on three levels, that is intellectual level, moral level and emotional level. Aristotle equates poetry with philosophy. So, man is the highest of the creator, as he was within him an urge to rise upwards, and that the poet imitates. Aristotle says art imitates nature, and in the Poetics we are told that the objects of imitation are man in action. Here by nature Aristotle doesn't mean the outward action but also the creative force, the productive principles of the universe. Here we can see that poetry renders man as he ought to be. He brings human experiences, emotions, passions, all that happens or likely to happen to man within the scope of possessions. So arts seeks to reproduces the inner process of mind, psychical energy working out toward deeds, incidents, situation and events. So tragedy and epic represent man on a heroic scale, or what we can say that better than they are, and comedy represents them as a lower or cheaper type, worse than they are in the real life. Aristotle does not discuss about the third possibilities. It means that poetry does not aim at photographic realism. Aristotle, by his theory of imitation, answers the charge of Plato that poetry is an imitation of shadow and twice removed from reality. So Aristotle does not discuss about the third possibilities. Poetry does not aim at photographic realism, and Aristotle says that art imitates ideal reality, what is ideal in life. As we can see that everything in nature is growing and moving up with many changes, and the poet imitates this upward moving and changes of nature. Thus, the poet represents the things as they appear to us. Thus, according to his ideas, poets build up a new world of imagination, and poetry is thus a creative process which gives us the poet's concept of truth or ideal world or ideal truth. Poetry is thus Poetry is thus idealized representation of character, emotions, passions, actions, and inner sense. Therefore, poetry is more philosophical to understand the real, what we can say, the real world. Thus, Aristotle successfully refused the charge of Plato and provided his defense of poetry. So, Aristotle does not. Poetry is more philosophical to understand the real world. It is said by Aristotle. Thus, Aristotle breathed into it a new life and soul into this concept of poetic imitation. Here in the conclusion, you can see that Aristotle gave new dimension and significance to the term imitation, which removed the sense of inferiority which is attached to it by Plato. Moreover, Aristotle doesn't pay more attention to morality like Plato in poetic imitation. Next thing, that poetry is one of the fine arts. Poetry is not a mere copying but an act of creative vision. So it's a kind of creativity. Through imitation, the poet can make something out of the real and actual. So, thus Aristotle successfully refused the charge of Plato and provided his defense of poetry. So this is all about the theory of imitation propounded by Aristotle, dear friends, in his famous book Poetics. Please mention your questions and doubts and observation in the comment box. So thank you very much. If you like, please like it and subscribe this video. Thank you, dear friends.